Good evening. There is a new conciliatory tone in US President Donald Trump in his messages. He seems to have adopted some kind of a new tone. Now, he's taken to social media platform to say, and I quote, "I'm pleased to announce that India and the United States of America are continuing negotiations to address the trade barriers between our two nations. I look forward to speaking with my very good friend Prime Minister Narendra Modi in the upcoming weeks. I feel certain there will be no difficulty in coming to a successful conclusion for both our great countries." Marked change from initially writing that India is a dead economy and that India and Russia have been lost to the deepest, darkest China. Is this a change of heart, or is this another part of those negotiation tactics that he seems to adopt?
Trump, tariffs, trade and talks. Trump-Modi ties reset. But is US pushing EU tariffs? Reports, US call for EU tariffs on India. India holds firm amid Trump tariffs. Trump's trade wars to trade talks. That is a big focus on India first.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi has also responded positively in public domain. He said, "India and the US are close friends and natural partners. I'm confident that our trade negotiations will pave the way for unlocking the limitless potential of the India-US partnership. Our teams are working to conclude these deals at the earliest. I'm also looking forward to speaking with President Trump. We will work together to secure a brighter, more prosperous future for both our people." The question we're asking on this broadcast is the US in damage control mode, especially post the Tianjin Shanghai Cooperation Organization summit? Or is the US just using this as part of its blow hot, blow cold tactics? Because there are others in Trump's team who continue to adopt a hard line. Also coming up on India First, the army has taken control of violence-hit streets of Nepal with curfew clamped. Of course, there's an appeal to writers to maintain peace. And coming up at 8:30 tonight, Israel's ambassador to India, Ambassador Reuven Azar, explains why Israel bombed Qatar. He also responds to Kerala Chief Minister Pinarayi Vijayan hitting out at India's investment pact with Israel amidst Gaza operations. I'm Gaurav Sawant. As always, let's get started with the headlines on India First. Uneasy calm on the streets of Nepal after army takes control. Kathmandu International Airport reopens. Curfew to stay in place till 6 in the morning. India Today continues to report from ground zero.
India Today is now giving you exclusive pictures from inside Nepal's parliament, which was set on fire. See the flames which are still ablaze inside the floor of the house of the parliament building.
As Nepal limps towards normalcy, consensus among Gen Z protesters builds through an online voting to make former Chief Justice of Nepal, Sushila Kharki, as the head of the government. Amidst political turmoil, block everything protests intensify in France. Buses set on fire, roads and trains blocked, nearly 200 people arrested, 80,000 security forces deployed on ground across France. Big move towards a nationwide special intensive revision of the electoral rolls. The Election Commission of India holds a key meeting with chief electoral officers and directs them to finish paperwork and start preparations. Legal battle over Sanjay Kapoor's wealth intensifies. Delhi High Court asks Priya Sajdev Kapoor to list out Sanjay's assets. A plea was filed by actor Karishma Kapoor's children seeking their fair share. Is US President Donald Trump now in damage control mode after calling the Indian economy dead and saying that the US had lost India and Russia to deepest, darkest China? Now, President Trump took to Truth Social to talk about the ongoing trade negotiations. He also said, I look forward to speaking with my very good friend, Prime Minister Narendra Modi, in the upcoming weeks. Prime Minister Modi responded cautiously, saying India and the US are close friends and natural partners, and that he too is looking forward to speaking with President Trump to work together to secure a brighter, more prosperous future for both our people. Now, Trump had also recently been quoted as asking, or American media was writing, that Trump was seeking European Union to impose 100% tariffs on India and China. Both Peter Navarro and Howard Lutnick continue to adopt a hard line. So what should one make of this blow-hot, blow-cold tactics of the United States of America ahead of a trade deal with the US?
India is one of the highest tariff nations in the world.
इस दिवाली में आपको एक बहुत बड़ा तोहफा देशवासियों को मिलने वाला है.
That means they do it to us and we do it to them.
A global diplomatic tour on social media. Donald Trump reaches out. Prime Minister Modi responds. The two leaders, once locked in tariff battles, now warming to renewed trade talks.
We missed you. We missed you a lot.
This apparent reset follows weeks of taunts and threats from Trump's closest advisors, Commerce, Treasury, and the White House.
It was a shame to see Modi getting in bed as the leader of the biggest democracy in the world with the two biggest authoritarian dictators in the world, in Putin and Xi Jinping. That doesn't make any sense. I'm not sure what he's thinking, particularly since India has been in a Cold War and sometimes a hot war with China for decades.
But the very tariffs meant to pressure India may have boomeranged back on the US economy. Moody's warns America is on the edge of recession. JP Morgan calls the economy weakening. Deloitte forecasts a downturn by year-end. The triggers: falling investment, rising costs, and Trump's trade wars. The latest shock is a labor report showing nearly 1 million fewer jobs than reported earlier. Weakened growth, falling profitability, and rising inflation all point to deep economic stress. Manufacturers are squeezed by higher steel and copper costs. Farmers are hurting more. Soybean exports down 30%, corn prices up 18%. Retaliation from China and Canada has slashed incomes and triggered layoffs. For ordinary Americans, the pain is double: lower wages and higher prices. University of Pennsylvania economists project a 5% decline in wages, with a typical middle-income household losing $22,000 over a lifetime because of the tariffs. Half a world away, India tells a different story. Strong economic growth, retail inflation at an 8-year low, and the GST windfall adding momentum to the economy.
I think if you take the GST into consideration, the impact of tariffs and the GST, the compensating effects of GST rate reductions and process reform could probably give us a 0.2 to 0.3% on a net basis in terms of drag on the GDP estimates that we have of 6.3 to 6.8 for the current financial year.
Trump's tariffs were meant to bend India. Instead, they weakened America's hand and pushed India, Russia, and China closer together. In hindsight, the olive branch may not be about friendship, but about survival. Bureau Report, Business Today TV.
So a conciliatory tone here, and then White House, or American media saying White House was talking about 100% tariffs that EU should impose on India and China. What should one make of the voices that are emerging from the United States of America? I have a power-packed panel joining me on the show. Dr. Walter Ladwig is Senior Associate Professor of International Relations at King's College London. Joins me on the broadcast. Ambassador Mohan Kumar, former ambassador to France. Ambassador Ashok Sajjanhar, former Deputy Chief of Mission to the European Union, Belgium and Luxembourg. Seema Sirohi, a very well-respected columnist and author of Friends with Benefits, the India-US story. In a moment, we will be joined by Arun Kumar Sharma, Senior Associate at the Center for Strategic and International Studies. But Dr. Ladwig, President Trump wrote that he looks forward to speaking with his very good friend Prime Minister Modi in the upcoming weeks. He's certain there will be no difficulty in a successful conclusion of a trade deal for our great countries. Do you see this as damage control exercise by President Trump? What do you make of this Truth Social post?
Well, I hope you're not expecting me to explain Trump to the world or make sense of his actions, but I will simply say that in some respects, we've seen this story before. If we go back to the first Trump administration, we do remember all of the accomplishments in national security cooperation and defense between the US and India, but there were some real bad periods of time on trade. Trump used to call India the trade or the tariff king or the tariff queen. In 2019, he withdrew the GSP preferences for India. There were arguments about Harley Davidsons and so forth. So unfortunately, this seems to be part of his belligerent tactic of sort of browbeating and bullying aside, and then trying to kind of assume that sort of softens things up and then try to put out a hand of friendship. And so we may just be seeing a more enhanced, a more extreme version of that story.
Okay, but Dr. Ladwig, in your view, are we over the hill when it comes to the bullying tactics, or will they continue to blow hot, blow cold till the time a deal is inked, something perhaps by October, November?
Look, I desperately hope so, because these two countries have a range of interests in national security and defense, the future of the Indo-Pacific, that are much bigger and more important than trade ties and a couple percentages of tariffs. The real concern here is that Trump risks blowing big holes in a bilateral relationship that, successive U.S. administrations have spent 2.5 decades trying to build. His proxies in particular have been going around saying some of the most horrible, insulting things, and it's going to take a long time to come back from that or say, oh, that was just a negotiating tactic.
Okay, Seema Sirohi, how does this square up with reports coming from the United States that White House wants the European Union to impose 100% tariffs on China and India for Russian oil?
Yeah, so the picture is not clear at all, and it may be part of a choreography that a lot of people in Washington said that it was Trump's biggest strategic mistake to blow a hole through the India relationship. So maybe he's trying to claw back some of that. And I would say that on the one side, Peter Navarro is saying the most obnoxious things.
Yes.
On the other side, President Trump is trying to create a common space. I think Navarro is sort of taking care of the MAGA crowd while the White House tries to do business with other countries. So, as I wrote today in my column, that nothing is clear and it's all very rocky. The FT report that Trump had asked the Europeans to put 100% tariffs on India to put more pressure on Russia is an example. So this pleasantries being exchanged between the Prime Minister and the President is all well and good. I would say if a trade deal can be signed quickly, sooner rather than later, that would be the only positive sign, I would say, concrete positive sign.
Okay, so all of this is very fluid right now. Ambassador Mohan Kumar, but would the European Union risk its supply chains and trade with China and India and impose additional tariffs? Or can they, like the US, threaten China but impose tariffs only on India? Or would they rather not do that at all?
My sense is that the EU may not act on this threat, but frankly, Gaurav, if there is no discrimination against India, And if the EU can bring down its imports of energy to zero, if the US can cut its imports from Russia to zero, they do buy some fertilizer, some palladium, and some uranium. If everybody, and if China brings it down to zero, then my advice to India will be look at it. You don't want to be the only one really doing this. But short of that, India's main position has been that we are discriminated against in this whole thing. But really, reacting to what some of your other co-panelists said, my sense is there is mixed messaging coming out of Washington, and there is good cop, bad cop, obviously. But where I think I disagree with what some people said before me is that I don't think it's just about trade, frankly. There are other issues which are currently bedeviling the relationship. One is certainly he's getting extremely irritated at Putin and Russia, and he's taking it out on others. And one of them can be India in terms of collateral damage. There is also, I think, the personal pique at India for whatever reason. There, I think I'm happy that the two leaders at least have made it up, and I'm glad they're talking in terms of meeting. Although from an Indian perspective, I would like them to meet after the trade deal is done, not before. I frankly think it's much better for the two leaders to meet once the negotiators have really sorted out the thorny issues. My sense, by the way, and I might be the only person on the panel who says it, I really think 99% of the trade deal is done. In my view, this was never about just trade. There were a lot of other issues which were brought in. And in any case, with President Trump, it's not just about trade, because there was Russian oil, there was maybe a personal pique associated with Pakistan, Nobel Prize, whatever. So I think we are looking at a whole range of issues. But I'm personally happy that other conversations between India and the US have continued. And that includes even the joint military exercise. So that's good news.
Yes. And since you mentioned the good cop, bad cop routine, Ambassador Sajanhar, White House Trade Advisor Peter Navarro, quoted as saying in the American media, words to the effect that Trump's post is a chance for India to apologize and deal with the US, or it won't end well for India if they don't come around soon. So is that only for the MAGA crowd, or they're playing this good cop, bad cop, and isn't he vitiating the pitch or the atmosphere further?
No, absolutely, Gaurav. Thank you very much for having me. You're right. I think it could be a good cop, bad cop. But, as some of the other panelists have said, it's, very difficult to decipher what President Trump actually has in mind. But, there is also the speculation that all these people, Peter Navarro, Howard Lutnick, etc., they might be basically parroting what Trump has been saying, largely to curry favor with the Trump, because, he's given them adequate latitude. Okay, they have used even expressions like, it is benefiting the Brahmins at the expense of ordinary Indian people, and it's Modi's war, etc. So, these are very, very derogatory remarks, insulting remarks. But, they are just trying to amplify Trump's message. But now I would imagine that Trump has changed his tune. Possibly these worthies would also tamper down on their pronouncements, and hopefully we will not see any more of it. But I think
Arun Kumar Sharma. Yes, go on, sir. Yes,
quickly. I think the reason for this, why Mr. Trump is making this change, number one, India has stood firm in the face of all these threats and coercion. India has not capitulated like most of the other countries, whether Japan, Korea, Indonesia, this, that, and the other. And then also, I think the messaging that went out, the signaling that went out, both from Tianjin, after the images that came out from Tianjin of the three leaders, and also of the virtual meeting that was organized by President Lula of the BRICS countries. And I think they took a unified stand there and sent out a very clear message to America as far as these high tariffs are concerned. So I
Fair
think
enough.
there
I want to
was
bring in Arun
backlash.
Kumar Sharma quickly into this conversation. Mr. Sharma, strategic partners and trade require predictability. India-US ties, and especially under Trump 2.0, there is no predictability. You have no idea what he may say or do tomorrow. We are told, as Ambassador Mohan Kumar was also pointing out, a framework was ready by July, 99% ready by July, and suddenly things changed because when Prime Minister Narendra Modi went to America in February, they worked out how things would be done. So social media posts clearly cannot be the only way for India and America, two comprehensive strategic partners, to remain in touch unless the level of trust is so low. You say anything privately, it may just be misconstrued tomorrow.
So the issue is, I think that we have to really recognize reality. The reality is the following, that President Trump is playing a multi-country game. It's not only just US, India. India is only one factor. He's optimizing for Russia. He's optimizing for China. He's optimizing for EU, and he's optimizing for India. That is the harsh reality. That's the first point. The second point is that he is very transactional, as we have discussed on this panel multiple times. And long-term relationships really don't matter to this president. That's very, very clear, certainly the relationship with India. The long-term damage is not, nobody is really taking into account the damage that has been done, I would say, and that'll take a long time to repair, in the trust that was built up over the last 20, 25 years. And memories of our previous estranged democracy times have really become, I think, very fresh in the establishment in New Delhi. I have no doubt about that. That's the second point. The third point is, I think, as a global hegemonic power, I think President Trump is a believer in unpredictability, just to keep people off balance, so that he can put pressure on them, because they're always guessing what the United States will do next, and they can't really prepare and position themselves for the next conversation. And the fourth point, I think, is very clear. This good cop, bad cop type of point, where he's basically saying, listen, we have people who are going to take our extreme positions. We will convey our extreme positions to put the Indians on a defensive. And on the other hand, he wants to keep the channel of communication open, which is why we are getting these, random conciliatory statements that come suddenly after really a barrage of nasty words.
Okay. Dr. Ladwig, India is looking for what has often been described as a fair and balanced agreement for both the countries. US has tried to ram through agreements that keep America first. So is there a middle ground? Is there a meeting ground? Because with several partners, and including, as some even on our panel have argued, that his America First policy is partially responsible for the resignation of the Japanese Prime Minister, for example. Will the US President be agreeable to a win-win and not US take all, like he's done either with countries like Japan or South Korea, Indonesia, Vietnam, or the European Union?
So I think Trump at his heart is more concerned with sort of style over substance. So something that could be packaged as a win is what he's looking for. I mean, if we really want to look at nuts and bolts, trade between the US and India is not huge compared to other big economies and other big nations. So the things that they're arguing over and the percentages and the specific industries are not significant in terms of some of these negative trends that you're reporting identified for the US economy. So I think as long as it allows him to claim some sort of victory and claim that he was able to negotiate down or talk Prime Minister Modi into something, that's at the end of the day really what he's looking for.
And is he likely to get that? By all accounts, Ambassador Mohan Kumar, some of the countries, they may have kowtowed to America. India clearly hasn't done that. And now some of these countries, I'm told there's a rethink even in the European Union. South Korea is not too happy. In Japan, the Prime Minister had to put in his papers. Is that going to have an adverse impact on Trump?
Trade negotiations, Gaurav, are a funny thing. It actually allows both sides to claim victory at the same time. and that will not be obvious. So I completely agree with Dr. Walding. You will have to somehow give a victory to both sides. Both sides can handle their domestic audience by saying we have won. And that means essentially that India will have to say our red lines have been respected. Americans, Trump will have to say, I have penetrated this huge market in India. I think it's perfectly possible. Anybody who has been associated with trade negotiations knows that the language can be ambiguous and it allows both sides to claim victory. I also believe, and that's the last point I will make, I do believe there are important sections in the United States which have come to the conclusion that the costs of alienating India far exceeds the benefits.
Oh, absolutely. But then are there enough people, level-headed people in the United States to see this through is the big question. And Seema Sirohi, the deals with the European Union and Japan had promises of $750 billion or $500 billion investment pledges to the United States of America, or at least these big headlines that Donald Trump wants that he can claim victory. Vietnam and Indonesia are supposed to have given massive market access. With India, there are very strong red lines and no talk of billions of dollars being invested in the US. How do you see this deal go ahead? Unless Trump realizes, as Ambassador Mohan Kumar was putting it and Ambassador Sachin before that, that the strategic ties are far more important than the trade deal.
Look, the way other countries and the European Union arrived at a deal was to sort of have this huge, impressive number for investments that would come to the US. Now, that's an intention, not a legal commitment. Besides, the investment is to come from the private sector in those countries. And no government in a democracy can sort of direct the private sector to do X, Y, and Z. So I think there are two parts to what's going on. One is the actual trade deal, which India has been negotiating and taken extremely seriously, sector by sector, and how much you can give, how much you can take. The other side is the headline side. So that Trump can say to his people, oh, I managed to open up India, I managed to do this. Whether that actually happens is up for question. We don't know. And I think others gambled on that because, over the next 3 years, whether those $500 billion come in terms of investment or don't, at least they have avoided the very extreme punitive tariffs. That's the point.
Yeah, and settle for that 15%.
Very important.
So in your view, should India have done that, Ambassador Sajjanhar, given that headline that Donald Trump wanted? Or is the United States realizing that Trump's trade policy may be at odds with the US foreign policy, especially on the Indo-Pacific? There are some who say, no, we are over-interpreting his social media posts because, US Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, White House spokespersons, they've clearly now started using the word Asia-Pacific and not Indo-Pacific.
I think, it'll come a full circle, Gaurav, and I don't think it is, a very temporary phenomena, but I think it's going to continue. And, Mr. Trump will take it in this vein, and we'll see, other elements of the relationship coming up. But, on this, I am also convinced, Gaurav, that the deal is by and large done. Everything is done. And, in that, the India's red lines are very clearly reflected. And India had sort of, made that the deal was lying on Trump's table. It was lying on Trump's table from the end of June. I know because, I was being told by our own people every day, today he's going to sign it, tomorrow he's going to sign it. He never signed it because, he thought all the other countries had succumbed to his pressure, to his coercion. India will also succumb to his pressure. Even with the deal that is there, he can claim huge victory because on industrial tariffs, we have given them, as the reports seem to suggest, we have given him a huge thing. So, he can say that, whatever was not available to us, We have been able to penetrate that. He's been saying it's the tariff king, but I have been able to do that. I have been able to go into the country, and of course,
And
we will.
yet it didn't happen. And yet it didn't happen. So perhaps he thought India will also buckle under pressure, and that hasn't happened since June till date. But Arun Sharma, has the US president realized that trade with India is not that one-sided disaster he made it out to be, that India is clearly not a dead economy, and his actions of imposing 25% tariffs initially and then an additional 25% sanctions, it had only strengthened the BRICS partnership, which was counterproductive for the US.
No, I think he made a lot of calculations. Not all of them panned out to be as per his plan. But I think we have to look at it at his view, as other panelists have said. The fact that he's not looking at it just trade alone. I think that's where it's geopolitics more than trade, in my view. I think the trade nitty-gritty, as most people already know, is almost done. What is complicating is the geopolitics, his pressure on Putin on the one side, his desire to make a deal with China, because there's also a view that part of the reason he's given a free pass to China and he's imposed those tariffs on India till today or till 2 days ago was that he was trying to give a signal to China that, look, we're willing to dump India, let's make a deal. And I'm giving you a free pass when you're more important to me than India is. So I don't know how necessarily that calculation is still valid, but the fact is completely indisputable that this is more than a trade issue. This is more of a geopolitics issue, and it's more of a win-win or versus win-lose issue. This president believes in a win-lose thing where he's the winner, the other person is the loser, and he's trying to optimize. At the same time, I think we have to remember he's a deal maker. He wants a deal. There's no question about that, which is why he keeps sending these messages to Prime Minister Modi to keep the dialogue open. He's saying, look, this deal is off the table. He's never said that, and he's not likely to say it. So I think he will continue to push India till he gets the best deal he thinks he can get. Thank you.
Okay, and Dr. Ladwig, the last 30 seconds that I have on this part of the show, you think there's a reconciliation on the cards, or is that reconciliation likely to be short-lived, given India's stance, given India's red lines on agriculture, dairy, fisheries, Russian oil, or will the American president, and I'm sorry I'm asking you to second-guess him, will he take a long-term view?
I think the people around him will push him towards a long-term view, and I think there's a lot of structural pressure on both countries to move beyond this and look beyond this. So I think if we go back and look at the first administration and the trade hiccups that preceded deepened cooperation, I'm hoping that will characterize this period of time as well.
And I will let that be the last word on this part of the show. Many thanks to such a fine panel of guests joining me on India First with their perspective. Helps us clearly understand the situation as it stands right now. I have breaking news that's coming in from Nepal. Trouble remains, the situation does remain on the edge in Nepal. The death toll, we're getting the latest death toll, and sadly after 2 days of violent protests, the death toll has climbed to 30. More than 1,000 people have been injured, and these are the 1,000 people who've been admitted to various hospitals nationwide in Nepal. Curfew remains in place till 6 in the morning tomorrow. The army is now completely in control when it comes to the streets, not just in Kathmandu, but across Nepal. Vital assets, vital points, airports, security installations, they are now being protected by the army, with the army chief requesting the youth to go back home, maintain calm, maintain peace, because that's the only way forward. India today has the biggest team of reporters on ground zero. We get you more in this report.
Nepal remains on the edge. The streets of Kathmandu, usually buzzing, are silent. The army patrols at every corner, enforcing strict curfew orders.
Right now, I am present at the Ghanta Ghar Chowk in Birganj. In fact, yesterday afternoon, how this area was literally burning. Several vehicles were torched here. Several buildings, the public buildings were also set on fire. Several army personnel you can see here. They are manning this entire area, not allowing anyone to move or crisscross this entire area, especially the protesters. There is some sort of a peace here in the town, in the heart of the town, in Ghantaghar area. But on the outskirts of Birganj, we are learning that still protesters are indulging in violence.
Nepal's army has taken charge, warning against arson and looting, and has called for dialogue.
राष्ट्रको सर्वोपरि हितको रक्षा गर्नु हामी सबैको साझा कर्तव्य हो। तसर्थ यस विषम परिस्थितिबाट राष्ट्रलाई शान्तिपूर्ण तवरले निकास दिनको लागि आन्दोलनरत समूहलाई आन्दोलनका कार्यक्रमहरू स्थगन गरी
At the Tribhuvan International Airport, operations have resumed after flights were suspended for 2 days. On Tuesday, violent protests of Parliament, the Prime Minister's residence, and even the Supreme Court set ablaze.
You can see the pillar structures that have come down, crashing down because of the possibly blast. These are the iron structures which are shattered at this point in time. And from here, where I'm standing, I can feel intense heat coming from there. The reason being that even 24 hours later, what we see is that the flames are still coming out of the Parliament House. And this is the floor of the house. Remember, from where you can see the flames which are still ablaze inside the floor of the house of the Parliament building, of the Parliament complex in Nepal.
This courtroom and the premises of district court could speak everything, that everything has been destroyed. This is a real picture of Nepal, which shows how intensive this protest was. And still, you can see this fire which has set on. These documents, and nothing could be saved in this courtroom. This visual shows you clearly that what would have been the condition on that moment.
In Birgunj, a jailbreak attempt forced police to open fire. Dozens of weapons and cash looted during the unrest have since then been recovered. On the India-Nepal border, calm returned. Security has been tightened, and Indians returning are being allowed in after ID checks.
कल यहाँ पर हिंसा भी हुई थी नेपाल के इलाके में और बाकायदा आगजनी भी हुई थी। बहुत सारे लोग जो नेपाल में हैं उन्हें भारत आने दिया जा रहा है, अगर वो भारत के हैं, और जो नेपाली यहाँ से जाना चाहते हैं उन्हें जाने दिया जा रहा है। बाकी पूरी तरीके से गाड़ियों पर रोक है, आवाजाही पर रोक है, और आज तो नेपाल में कई जगहों पर कर्फ्यू भी लगा हुआ है। हालात आजकल के मुकाबले काफ़ी बेहतर हैं और शांति कम से कम इलाकों में बनी हुई है।
With KP Sharma Oli gone, political churn has begun. Reports suggest there is a consensus being built to bring former Judge Justice Sushila Karki as the head of the government. Other names being considered are Kathmandu Mayor Balendra Shah and former Home Minister Rabi Lamichhane. For India, the focus is on the border. The big question now is, can peace hold and a new civilian government be elected, or will protesters return to the streets? With Kumar Abhishek, Amit Bhardwaj, Rohit Singh and Ashish Srivastav in Nepal, Bureau Report, India Today.
And Prime Minister Narendra Modi has spoken to the Emir of Qatar. He's expressed his concern over the attack that took place by Israel on Qatar, on the Hamas in Qatar. Earlier today, I had spoken to Israel's ambassador to India, Reuven Azar, who explained why Israel had carried out strikes in Qatar, Doha, and targeted the Hamas leadership. He also reacts to Kerala Chief Minister Pinarayi Vijayan's criticism of India's investment pact with Israel amidst Gaza operations we get you excerpts of that India Today special interview. After Israel carried out targeted strikes inside Qatar to target the Hamas leadership, Prime Minister Narendra Modi has spoken to the Emir of Qatar. Prime Minister Narendra Modi is just taking to social media platform X to say, spoke with the Emir of Qatar, Sheikh Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani, and expressed deep concern at the attacks in Doha. India condemns the violation of the sovereignty of the brotherly state of Qatar. We support resolution of issues through dialogue and diplomacy and avoiding escalation. India stands firmly in support of peace and stability in the region and against terrorism in all its forms and manifestation. Earlier today, I had spoken to Israel's ambassador to India, Reuven Azar, on why Israel carried out the strikes in Doha, in Qatar, to target the Hamas leadership. I also put several other questions to him, including Pinarayi Vijayan criticizing the government for an investment pact with Israel, and on Priyanka Gandhi Vadra and his response to her on social media platform X. Listen in. Israeli security forces have bombed the Hamas negotiation team in Qatar, in Doha, and this move has drawn widespread criticism, not just in Qatar, but even from the United States of America and some of the opposition parties inside Israel. But what was Israel hoping to achieve? Have they been able to do so? And the road ahead. Joining me on this India First special broadcast is Israel's ambassador to India, Ambassador Reuven Azar. Ambassador, welcome on India Today.
Thank you, Gaurav, for hosting me.
Before I come to this question on what you were hoping to achieve with the bombing of the negotiation team at Doha, Qatar, internally in India, politics on the subject has escalated on Israel's operations against Hamas in Gaza. Pinarayi Vijayan is the chief minister of a very popular state, Kerala. He has said that he strongly condemns India's union government's decision to host Israel's finance minister, calling him a far-right extremist and a chief architect of Israel's brutal occupation and expansionist agenda. He says at a time when a genocide is unfolding in Gaza, entering into an agreement with this representative of the Benjamin Netanyahu establishment is nothing short of betrayal of India's historic solidarity with Palestine. How would you respond to that criticism where they want India to pull back from this association with the Netanyahu government?
Gaurav, Finance Minister Bezalel Smotrich came to India not to discuss the future of the Middle East. He came here to do three things: to sign a bilateral investment treaty, a very important treaty that will encourage investments both of Indians in Israel and of Israelis in India. He came here to promote the participation of Indian infrastructure companies in infrastructure projects in Israel, which are going to finance in the dozens of billions of dollars. This is a great opportunity for India. And the third thing he came to do is to increase our financial cooperation, to make sure that transactions between the two countries can work swiftly and cheaply. This is what he came to do. It serves the interests of India, it serves the interests of Israel.
What are areas where India and Israel are deepening their cooperation and coordination through this bilateral and otherwise?
Well, the rise of India as an economic power presents opportunities both for India to be more competitive in the international arena and also for Israelis to source part of their production in India. That means that when we sign this bilateral investment treaty, it will encourage companies from both sides to engage in a much more robust way. It will bring jobs, it will increase trade. It's a great blessing for our countries, and I'm thankful to the Indian government, and especially to the Minister of Finance that actually has expedited this negotiation. Israel is the first OECD country that signs this agreement with India, and the sixth country that India has ever signed this agreement with. In addition to that, the infrastructure opportunities in Israel are huge, and India has developed an immense capacity when it comes to building projects, whether it be metro, power stations, roads, railways, and we invite Indian companies to come and participate in these tenders in Israel.
Okay. Let me now, Ambassador, before I come back in a moment on other aspects of India-Israel relationship, talk about the criticism that's coming your way for the bombing of the negotiations team in Doha, Qatar. Hamas said while 5 members of its team had been killed in the attack, including the son of Hamas's exiled Gaza chief and top negotiator Khalil al-Haya, it also said Israel had overall failed in what the Hamas called was an assassination attempt of the ceasefire team. So in your assessment, Ambassador, what was achieved in this targeting of the negotiation team?
We targeted the perpetrators of the terrible massacre of the 7th of October. This terrorist leadership of Hamas, these were the people that commanded the massacre of 1,200 Israelis on the 7th of October, the rape, the burning of babies, the kidnapping of 250 hostages. These are the people in charge of these terrible crimes. And terrorists should know there is no place they can hide from their heinous crimes. So Israel took a precision strike in order to remove them, especially in the backdrop of the fact that they have been stalling negotiations for the last year. We were utilizing military pressure and negotiations. But what Hamas wanted, with the support of Qatar, is to remain in power in the Gaza Strip. We are not going to allow that. We stated from the 8th of October, one day after this massacre began, that Israel will release all the hostages and will make sure that Hamas cannot rearm or regroup, and they have to move away from the Gaza Strip. If they do not do that, they will be destroyed.
Okay, but Hamas's top leadership, they were reportedly meeting, at least the information that's come out in public domain, to work on a ceasefire, and it was a US attempt at getting a ceasefire in place. Hostages would have been released within 48 hours of this 60-day truce in exchange of course, Palestinian prisoners and good faith negotiations towards a permanent ceasefire. This strike by Israel, hasn't it undermined such a major attempt at a very crucial juncture?
No, Gaurav, and I'll tell you why. Because Israel has accepted the American proposal, and the Hamas leadership had rebuked the proposal. They have said that they will still be stubborn to keep in control of the Gaza Strip, to get Israel to withdraw and them to take power again. Israel is not going to accept that. It was a non-starter. And this is after 1 year that they have been stalling these negotiations. We are not going to agree to that. The future of Gaza would be a brighter future, a future that the Palestinian people deserve. They have been stalling this release of the hostages and renouncing power for a long period of time on the account of the suffering of their own population. This has to stop. This can stop today. It could stop yesterday. It could stop 1 year ago.
Okay, but tell me right now, Ambassador, what's Israel's game plan? Apparently, according to some reports, you have Hamas in one corner of the Gaza Strip. So will the Israeli forces now go in lock, stock and barrel and destroy them there, even if it means collateral damage? What's the strategy?
Well, we have approved the plans for the taking of the Gaza City. We are now preparing on the humanitarian aspect places for the Palestinian population from Gaza City to move to in order to receive food, water, and medical treatment. We already have announced our intention to enter the city itself. We already control 40% of the city. Hamas is attempting to stop the evacuation of the population. It will not help. It will only cause collateral damage. And therefore, we are continuing this operation, and we are, with a very strong conviction that unless Hamas renounces power, accepts the American proposal, Israel will have to go all the way. We will take the Hamas' biggest stronghold in Gaza City.
And which is the stronghold where Hamas remains, and how long for you to control that entire 100% of the Gaza Strip, if that is what you intend to do? If Hamas prevents Palestinians from leaving, does this mean this genocide of innocents continues, or starvation deaths?
Well, first of all these terms that are linked with genocide and starvation are completely false. There have been victims in Gaza as a result of this war. There has been suffering in Gaza, but there is no intentional starvation, and there is not genocidal intent from the side of Israel. We are taking military action to defend ourselves, and anyone that uses these terms is lying, is actually cooperating with the Hamas propaganda that is trying to stop us from achieving our goals, that is trying to remain in power in the Gaza Strip, that has genocidal intentions against the state of Israel. And even a report of the British government only 2 days ago that was adopted by the British Foreign Minister, has mentioned that Israel is not committing genocide in Gaza. And therefore, these terms are completely false. Israel will pursue its interests because we have a right to defend ourselves, because terrorists have to be removed, both the terrorists in the Gaza Strip and also terrorists in other places. There's no impunity for terrorists.
Okay, so you're saying terrorists are not safe even if they are in Doha, Qatar, but American President Donald Trump, he says he immediately directed the US Special Envoy Steve Witkoff to inform Qatar about the impending attack. But then in that position, they were a bit too late to stop the attack. There are analysts who see this as a strain on US-Israel relationship. Do you agree with that the relationship is now under strain and there was lack of coordination between Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and his team and President Trump's team?
No.
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 So what do you make of President Trump, his message?
His message basically said that the forces, the American forces that were over there, had to be warned, and the Qataris have to be warned, not in order to prevent the Israeli attack. Israel has a right to defend itself, and even President Trump himself has acknowledged that, including in this attack.
Yeah, your goals were noble, but perhaps the ways were not...
The ways were also okay, and we are coordinating with the United States. We are doing what we have to do, and they are doing what they have to do, and I think this cooperation will continue.
Okay. However, in your own country, in Israel, sir, Yair Lapid, opposition leader, he took to social media platform X to say, and I quote, Hamas members are sons of death. But at this stage, the Israeli government needs to explain how the IDF operation will not lead to the killing of the hostages and whether the risk to the hostages' life was taken into account in the decision to carry out the operations. It is forbidden to wait any longer. The war must be ended. They must be brought back home. Heart is with the families. But then this operation, with the bombing of Qatar, have you risked the lives of your hostages?
Well, we are a democracy, Gaurav, and in democracy, leaders, especially leaders of the opposition, have the right to criticize the actions of the government. I think we share, all in Israel, we share the concern for the hostages. I think that without military action, we have proved in the past that hostages cannot be retrieved. We have, through military action, put pressure, and then through negotiations, we've been able to retrieve 206 hostages. In order to release the rest of the hostages, nobody is going to volunteer. If we want to achieve the goal of bringing them back and also achieving a better future for the Gaza Strip, we will continue to have to put military pressure, especially in a time in which these terrorists are stalling for time.
So you think terrorists are stalling for time, they want to retain control, Hamas wants to retain control of Gaza, and Israel will not permit that?
Absolutely.
However, on this 8th of September, unfortunately, 6 Israelis were also killed in a terror attack, not just in Jerusalem, one of the deadliest shootings in Jerusalem. Your soldiers were killed on the outskirts of Gaza. I believe 4 soldiers were killed. So all your efforts since 2022 till date, the threat remains.
Well, this is another proof, Gaurav, that the Hamas leadership in Doha that has directed this attack in Jerusalem is not serious in negotiating, in achieving peace, in renouncing power in the Gaza Strip. What they want to do is to continue their violence, continue their terror until Israel is eliminated. That's what they want to achieve.
And you will ensure that doesn't happen. In your stay in India, while you spoke of this great meeting between Nirmala Sitharaman and the finance minister of Israel and how it may pave the way for bilateral exchanges between the two countries at a much greater scale, you had a recent spat on social media with a prominent leader in the opposition party, in the Congress party, Priyanka Gandhi Vadra, over her comments on Gaza and your response. And there are several opposition leaders who say that you overstepped, your diplomatic norms in that stage. Would you want to respond to that?
We are very sensitive when it comes to blood libels against our country. When we are blamed for genocide, when we are blamed for a policy of starvation, which are not true, we cannot stay silent, Gaurav, because too many blood libels have been waged against our people for the last 2,000 years, and as a result of these blood libels, thousands and millions of Jews have been killed. So it's okay to have criticism and to have a debate. But when you try to put a blood libel on our people, we, as representatives of the State of Israel, cannot stay silent.
And in your view, sir, this continues indefinitely, this war against Hamas? Is there a deadline? Is there a time frame in which you would be able to be in control of the Gaza Strip?
Well, there's not a strict timeline. We don't know how operations will go, and we don't like to share operational details about the IDF intentions. We hope that this situation can be sorted out in the coming months. And again, we would be very happy if we could stop this, not now, 1 year ago. The only thing that we need is for Hamas to accept its defeat, to release the hostages, and to cooperate with the Arab world and with the international community in creating a much better and bright future for the Gaza Strip.
Ambassador Reuven Azar, for joining me here on this India First special. Many thanks.
Thank you very much. Good to see you.
Good to see you, sir. So Israel's ambassador to India is very clear. Their operations against Hamas in Gaza will continue, and no place across the world in their appreciation is safe for Hamas, even if it means striking at Doha, Qatar. They're willing to take the consequences.